One of the ulama said that taqwa is basically walking through through thorny bushes. And what do? You hold your clothing tightly to yourself so the thorns will not catch hold of your clothing. Right? So your clothing is your iman. Your clothing is your iman, and you're trying to walk through, and these thorns are the dunya and shaitan. And it's trying to hook onto your clothing to pull you back. Right? So you walk through. Taqwa is basically going very carefully through life, right? So that the thorns of the dunya does not grab onto you. Okay, the second hadith is the one that there are actually different opinions as to how it was drawn. So I'm going to get my book in a while. I'll read through the hadith first. I will get my book. Right? Because in the Salihin they will show the different drawings, right? That was there. I'm not sure why there are different drawings. Maybe even more than one time. So different Sahaba actually narrated different type of drawings that some actually do. Is it? رواه البخاري عن عبد الله بن مسعود رضي الله عنه قال خط النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم خطا مربعا وخط خطا في الوسط خارجا منه وخط خطوطا صغارا إلى هذا الذي في الوسط من جانبه الذي في الوسط فقال هذا الإنسان وهذا أجله محيط به وهذا الذي هو خارج أمله وهذه الخطوط الصغار الأعراض فإن أخطأه هذا نهشه هذا وإن أخطأه هذا نهشه هذا وإن أخطأه كلها أصابه الحرم. Right, so Bukhari narrates on the authority of Sayyidina Abdullah bin Mas'ud anhu, who said that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam drew a square, and this is the image you see in front, right? This image, right? He drew a square, right, and then he drew a line in the center of the square coming out of it from the top, right? Then he drew small lines on either side of the line which was in the center of the square, right? So that's where the difference of opinions comes in, whether the lines were outside, right, or whether they were inside. Right? For me, just from the explanation of the hadith, I actually take the one that's inside. Right? Because it actually makes sense to be inside. Allahu A'lam. We're going to see the outlook by him. Right? So he drew lines on the side of it, right? Small lines. Right? And then he says, this is man. Right? This entire thing is man. Right? This square is his lifespan. His ajal. Right? This line are his hopes. His hope will always extend past his ajal. He always hope to live to old age. He hopes to see his grandchildren. He hopes. Right, but his ajal actually is. So this hadith tells us that our hopes always exceed our ajal. You never think you're gonna die at the age whereby you're gonna die. Right? You always think I'm gonna die more. Later than that. Not at this age. Later than that. Right. So and then the small lines he says. Right, so this line that is coming out of the square represents his hopes. Right, the small lines are the hardships, difficulties, and calamities that will afflict him. If one of them misses him, the next one will seize him. If the next one misses him, the following one will seize him. If all of them miss him, then old age and senility will afflict him. Alright, what does this mean? That's why I follow the opinion that the lines were actually inside. Because if it's afflictions and hopes, it should have been within the ajal. Right, and the hope should be outside of the ajal, right? It makes sense that the hardship should be within the ajal, right? The lifespan of the man, right? I'll take my book. I keep saying that, right? So, but I want to explain the whole thing because I'll get my book. It's in the Salihin, right? So, so if one of it misses him, in the sense that what does it mean by miss him? I miss him. One of the explanations is that miss him in the sense it came to him, it hit him. But he took no lessons from it. It does not wake him up. Right? So his amal is so long. His hope is so far into the future. His ajal is very near. Right? Afflictions and hardships come to him to remind him, right, that your ajal is very near. Right? So it comes and it hits him, right? But it misses him. Right? In a way that he missed it. You know, that it came and it hit you, but you're like, you just went through it. Right? So you got diseases, you got afflictions, it was an accident, or whatsoever. Right? All you saw, you know, but you're still having your high hopes, right, of long life expectancy, you know, whatever it is. Right? The next one, so if you miss one, the next one should get to you. You miss that one too. The next one should get to you. You miss that one too. And that means Allah is giving him all kinds of warnings in his life. Right? To tell him that the death is near. Death is near. You know, you better get your life together. Death is near. Right? If all of them miss him, right, then eventually old age should get to him. Right? Old age should remind him that his death is near. Right? Old age and senility should get to him. Right? So that's what it means, eh? Right? And basically all of this, you know, awarid, things that will afflict him in between, should cut short his hopes, right, of having a long life. Right? They should actually cut short his hopes. Right? But eventually, if all of it didn't get to him, and then he will just have to have his, if he reaches his old age lah, right, he will have his old age that will remind him that his ajal is very near. Right? It's not far off. Right? That is basically the drawing lah that we see in front here. How Rasulullah explains to us. Right? So it is very clear in your mind, right, that your ajal is always short of your amal. Your hope is always, you know, longer or higher than you expect to live longer than what is actually written for you. And you think of it that way, like you think to yourself, okay, how long do I expect to live? Just think to yourself. So maybe I'll hit 60, you know, or 70. Right? So that means that your life expectancy should be less than that. Right? In a way, no. So you're like, oh, most of us, we think that we will live to see our grandchildren. You might think that, you don't actually think that you will live before your children get married. At least, at least you think I will live to see them get married. In a way. But that's our amal. That's our hope. We think that it's going to be that long. We know death is coming, right? But we don't really think it. It's just you don't really believe it. You know it's coming, but you don't believe it. Right? But plenty of people have like, you know, both my grandfathers did not live to see that any of the kids get married. Both my grandfathers, right? And I think, I don't know. So for my mother lost her father when she was 18. She's the oldest. My father lost his father when he was 17. Right? So it's kind of like, you never even imagine that you won't see it. Right? And the signs are all around us. Right? The awarid, it could be difficulties in your life or in other people's life. Right? They're all reminders from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? But if you can just go past the insan, just go past it. You don't see it. Right? So Rasulullah thus explained to them by means of an illustration, right, which he drew on the ground. How man and all his high hopes are encompassed by sudden death. Right? Debilitating. What's that word? Can't pronounce that word. Debilitating? What is that? Debilitating illnesses and sicknesses and destructive old age. He thus urged them to curtail their hopes and to prepare for sudden death. Here, the ground and the sand was used as a means of explaining the concept to them. As you see, of course, Rasul would just tell you, right, that you always have high hopes, right, you have long expectations, right, you think of you having long life, and that can come at any time. You could just say that to the human being, and Allah sends you reminders here and there. Right, but he took the way of drawing on the ground, so that this entire image, right, it is embedded in the mind of the Sahaba, right, and thereafter in the minds of people, that you see this image. Right, maybe you can put the image up somewhere. I'm wondering this is the image. That is your hopes, and this is your lifespan, and every day you look at the image. And you keep reminding yourself, like how many of the award have come to you and you have missed it. Like how many have afflicted you and you just went through it and you didn't even pay heed to it. Okay, let me get my book. I want to show the easy. Why she not? I don't want you to step on the why she doesn't step on. Why? You don't like the mess. I always envision this one.
So you will draw first or you will draw as it's talking?
He drew as he was talking. So he drew the boxes. Then he said this is the human being, right? So the box is a human being, and this is when he said this is a human being. Then he said through the box is his lifespan, right? Then he drew the line. Then it says hopes on love. And so first you see the hopes was right, and then he drew the small lines. And so the part where he describes the hopes, where were the small lines? Because the hadith is saying these small lines next to the long line. Right, so the long line was from within the box to outside the box. Right, so you just imagine that the box was in the box because the ajal is already there. Right, so it can't be that after the ajal. Right, it means already dead by then. Right, so you just or it could be that the ajal is a sudden death, right, and if sudden death doesn't get to him, then suddenly comes get to him. I don't know how what was actually intended. Right, but I always like the other one, the lines being inside. I found it easy to explain. The lines being outside, but it really depends lah. Right. Okay, but here you see Rasulullah using imagery, right? And even when it's not necessary also, he could have very well explained to the Sahaba without actually saying, drawing all of these things. He could just very well explain the entire concept of ajal and death and awarid and whatsoever. He could have done that. But he chose to draw. So it's part of his sunnah to draw. So whenever we draw, we should use images. We should actually, intend that I'm following the sunnah of Rasulullah in using images for my children to understand. And sometimes not even images. Sometimes you can just like make them, use their hands, to do shapes, right? So count, right, to show the fingers, even if they can count themselves. Right, so sometimes I will use fingers to show their memorization. So like kul kafirun. Right, for young children, they will go in circles. Right, so whenever I give them like this, right, there are 6 ayats. Right, so they know that wala antum aabina ma'abud. Right, they will quickly jump to lakum dinukum waliyadin. Right, after the 3rd ayat, they will jump there. Right, so when they see me do this, that means there's 3 more. Then they know, must repeat. The first 2. Then when I show the thumb, then lakum dinukum waliyadin comes. Imagery lah. It's imagery, right? Because otherwise, they can't, they're too young sometimes lah, right, in their heads to know that they're not done yet with the surah. Right? And sometimes I will like, even for surah Bayinah, right, whereby innal ladhina kafaru. So I will kafaru, okay, do that. Right? So kafaru. Right, so when it's like this, there's no abada. Right, when it's amanu, has an abada. Right, because the person is mutashabihat. So unless you can in your mind, understand the verses, or in your mind, okay, the first one has no abada, the second has abada. Right, that kind of thing lah. But for like, if they're very young, like 3 or 4 years old, unless you hear it all the time, even then also they were confused. Right, they will jump between the innal ladhina kafaru and ladhina amanu. Right, and then my nephew today, innal ladhina amanu wa amilu solihati falahum ajrun. I was like, hallelujah, surah is this? It's Surah Bayinah. You jump to surah. To some other surah altogether. And I said, falahum ajrun ghairu mamnun. We jump into another surah. So mutashabihat lah for children, to actually teach them imagery lah, like to show, use your fingers, right, to show them, right. I mean, you can always draw paradise, right? There's nothing wrong with drawing paradise, but of course, always inform them that wherever we draw a paradise, it is definitely much better than this, right? Because we are told that paradise is something that no eye has ever seen, no ear has ever heard, right? Nobody can imagine paradise, right? So you use images, right, for Rasulullah. And then for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, I keep, for me, you all know, I will use the green heart, right? I will draw a green heart, right? So it's no image of a man, right? No, not even a like a figure or whatsoever, nothing, right? Just a green heart, right? So the day Khalil was like, I dreamt about the green heart. Did you see that, or you saw a green heart? I saw a green heart.
Just the heart?
He said, oh no. Am I spoiling his dreams for him? not seeing the Prophet, but he's seeing the green hat. Sorry, what green hat do you see? The Prophet, I saw the green hat. He's a man, you know, he's a man, but I only draw a green hat. Right, but I mean, yeah lah, so, but images lah, imagery. Alhamdulillah. Okay, so 62, right? So I like this method, right? Because it just, you know, it affirms for us, right, the entire sunnah, right, of drawing, right, for them. روى إمام أحمد في مسنده عن عبد الله بن عباس رضي الله تعالى عنهما قال خط رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في الأرض أربعة خطوط وقال أتدرون لما خططت هذه الخطوط قالوا الله ورسوله أعلم فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أفضل نساء أهل الجنة خديجة بنت خويلد وفاطمة بنت محمد ومريم ابنة عمران وآسية بنت مزاحم امرأة فرعون. Right, as mentioned just now, the hadith, right? So the four lines in the ground. Imam Ahmad narrates that in his Musnad on the authority of Abdullah bin Abbas who said Rasulullah drew 4 lines on the ground and then asked, do you know why I drew these lines? And the Sahaba, with all respect to Rasulullah, said, Allah and His Messenger know best. Right? Sometimes the Sahaba will answer, and sometimes they will not answer. Right? They will just, leave it to Rasulullah and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Especially the 4 lines in the ground, how could you guess? I mean, how could you actually possibly guess what they are, right? The 4 lines in the ground. Right? So they answer it full adab with Rasulullah, only Allah and the Islam know best. Right? And then he said, right, that the most superior of the women of paradise are 4: Khadija bint Khuwailid, Fatima bint Muhammad, Maryam bint Imran, Asiya bint Muzahim, the wife of Fir'aun. Right, so you see, he does not have to draw the lines. Right, this hadith could have been done by just saying the last sentence. Right, it suffice. Last sentence, you say that the 4 best women in paradise are this and this and this and this. And these 4 people are the best in paradise, right? But he did this 4 lines thing, right? One thing, to cause the Sahaba to pull their attention. Right? So you draw like 4 random lines, and you're like, what are these things? Right? So it makes them think first, right? And then you pull their attention, and also that they always remember there's actually 4. Right? If you just say things out verbally like that, right? They might forget it's 4, and they might think it's 3. Right? They might leave out the 4th one, but because you drew 4 and they saw 4. A lot of us remember this by seeing, where it is. That's why also in Quran memorization later when you grow older, right? For us also is to memorize on the same mushaf all the time, right? Not to change mushaf. I stay on the same mushaf all the time, right? So that you have the same image in your mind as you memorize. And those who memorize, they actually see the verses, which part of the page, right? They know it's here or here or here or here. Right? They know which juice is on and whatsoever. Right? Because they memorize, it's a visual way also, like because you're seeing it here. Right? So I know the ayat is here. It's the beginning of this juice. Right? Because I memorize it like that. Right? So it's not recommended to actually memorize from the phone. Right? Whereby there are no pages. And for me also, I don't really like reading from the apps. Whereby the verses are all separated. Right? Because you don't actually see the page. Right? I like this apps whereby they have the full page. And then because I'm familiar with the page. Right? So I like seeing where it is. Right? Allahu A'lam. Right? So this basically the visual. Right? It is important. Right? The most probable reason for drawing these 4 lines was to emphasize the merit of these 4 women over all the other 4 women of paradise. The superiority was emphasized because the Sahaba heard it from the Prophet ﷺ and saw him drawing the lines on the ground. Right? For the 4 women, of course, if you want to do commentary on each of the 4, it will be very long to talk about every single one of the 4. Right? But just to go through briefly, right? These 4 women, we see one thing about them is that there is, when it comes to women, people separate women according to married, non-married, right? Have kids, don't have kids, right? That kind of thing. Right? They separate women according to usually this kind of labels, right? So you see that these 4, right? All 4 of them, like for example, Sayyidina Khadija bint Khuwailid, right? She was widowed, a widowed woman, right? She married Rasulullah in her as an older woman, right, widow with children, right, and she was a rich woman, but she was rich not keeping her wealth to herself, right? She gave all her wealth away in charity. And that's what you know about Sayyidah Khadijah. She was not a woman who flaunted her wealth. She didn't even keep her wealth, not much as flaunted. Right? She gave it away in charity. Sayyidah Fatima bint Muhammad, she was married young, passed away young, right? And she was married to a very poor person. Sayyidina Ali was very poor. She lived a life of poverty. Right? Sayyidina Fatima, radiallahu anha, right? She basically, her work was to grind grain, right, into flour. Right? Sayyidina Khadijah, her work was to be a businesswoman. Right? So you see the entire variety of things going on. Right? Sayyidina Maryam, radiallahu anha, alayha salam, right? For her, she was not married. Right, single mother. You call her a single mother. Definitely, she was. Right? It's not no father for Nabi Isa, right? Right, single mother, and she was very young, a very young mother. Sayyidina Maryam radhiyallahu anha, and she was known for her chastity, right, and also her zuhud. Right, they all fall under zuhud. And Asya binti Muzahim, right, she was married to the worst of men. Right, so Sayyidina Khadijah, Sayyidina Fatima, they were married to the best of men. Right, Sayyidina Asya binti Muzahim, she was married to the worst of men, Fir'aun. Right, she bore no children, right, because it was mentioned that Fir'aun was made impotent. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him impotent. Right, so she bore no children, and she was basically not working, a non-working woman, because she's the house of Fir'aun. Right, so basically the riches of Fir'aun is all around her in the palace of Fir'aun. Right, but she was not deluded by the wealth of Fir'aun. Right, so you see, like, this entire, it's they're all different. Right? All when it comes to the dunyawi, from the dunyawi point of view, they're all very different. Right, with regards to their marital status, right, their children, their wealth, right, their jobs, right, it's very, very different. But all of them reach perfection in faith, which shows us that no matter what you're standing in society, right, or what wealth you have, or where you are, like in the dunyawi sense. It is on you to achieve your own perfection in faith. It's on you to strive to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and no person can blame someone else for not allowing you to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can't. If Asya can get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being under Fir'aun, you can. Your husbands are not like Fir'aun, they're lesser than Fir'aun, alhamdulillah. Right? So, alhamdulillah, they're Muslim men, they're good men. Right? So if a woman will say, oh, my husband is stopping me, is stopping my spiritual development, nobody can stop your spiritual development. He can stop you from going for classes and whatsoever, but your spiritual development basically happens, between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even if he stops you from night prayers, even if he stops you from, all of his acts of worship, it's a matter of, how connected you are to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's just you. It just goes down to you. Right? So you want to pray, you want to focus on your prayer, right? You want to do your zikr, your dua, you want to be in continuous zikr. It's up to you. No one can stop you. No one can stop you from doing that. Right? No husband, no man can stop you. Right? Same thing with your job. Right? You say, oh, I'm busy, I have work to do and whatsoever. So my work is making me spiritually far from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's up to you, actually. It's really you. Right? You choose if your work is going to bring you far or near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? We mentioned the story before, right, about the man who was a wali, right, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informed him that there was another man in town, right, who was a greater wali than him. And this man who was a wali, he was all the time in the cave, remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The story, And so when he went down to look for this man who was a greater wali, right, he found that he was in this coffee shop, right, serving, right, working and serving the customers. So he was sitting there at the corner and he was watching this man for some time. Then after that he came up to the man and he said that I was told that you were a great wali, and all I see is that you're just so occupied in your dunya, whereas for me I'm in my cave and I worship Allah subhanahu all day. Right? So how could it be? I'm just wondering lah. He's not that he was being arrogant or whatever, he was wondering. And the man said, take this bowl of soup and bring it to those people over there. Right? And they were quite far. And then and he said, don't drop a single drop of it, and then come back. And then I'll tell you. So the man took the bowl of soup, and it was filled with soup, right? And he carried it all the way to the table on the other end of the shop, right? Then when he came back, right, the owner of the shop said, so what were you thinking about the entire time you were walking there? Right? And he said, the only thing I could think about was the soup, right? Not to spill a drop of the soup. right? And then he said there is a difference between me and you. Right? For you, you need to be secluded before you remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For me, I'm doing all this work right now in the dunya, but I never forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the main difference, right, between us. Right? So it really, like a woman's, traversing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, her suluk, right? her journeying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is really her. Right? If she wants, right, to get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, she can. Right? And nobody can stop her. Right? Nobody can stop her if she wants to get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alright, alhamdulillah. Okay, we finished method number 10. On to method number 11. Right? Combining speech with gestures. Right? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to combine speech with gestures when teaching in order to clarify and bring to the attention of his audience the importance of his message and teachings. Right, so again, right, to use hand movements, very important. Right, otherwise you get very boring. Right, without hand movements, especially when you give speeches, to point, right, to move your hands, right, and you will see like good speakers, they actually use their hands a lot, right, as they speak, right, and all the more when it comes to children, all these methods are even more important for them, right, facial expressions, moving your hands around, right, changing voice pitches, right, going high pitch, low pitch, and all these things is all part of education, right, of teaching. And that's why there are many articles, many books written, right, about why it's so important, right, to have a human teacher, right, and not something that is electronic, right, because something that is electronic cannot engage with the audience, right, because if it's a human teacher, you can gauge from their faces, whether they're understanding, they're paying attention, like you can see whether they are being drawn to what you're saying, and you can adapt yourself with respect to what you see of their faces, right, as opposed to something that is electronic, right, that thing, right, can't sense the audience, right, there's no, it's a one-way, right, it's a one-way interaction, it's not a two-way interaction, right, even if they play games or whatsoever, it's not, there's no connection, right, with the teacher, right. So like for me, and I think most of us here are very strong believers, right, in human teachers, right, and not in electronic teachers. You don't, no matter what they say about all this latest technology and whatsoever, nothing beats a teacher with a whiteboard. Right, they have all the technology, subhanallah, it does not beat a teacher with a whiteboard. Even when it comes to science, maths, all that, language. I know, and a lot of people they actually argue saying that, oh, my child learned a lot of ABC and a lot of words through all these videos and whatsoever. Right? Your child will learn the same thing through you and bond with you. Right? Double, you get double. Right? They don't think that they can only learn these things through videos. Right? All it does for you is it gives you free time. Right? Basically that's what it does. It gives you free time. They're learning some words online. But you're not connecting. Right, with your children, so you're missing your free time. You're missing out connecting with them, right? And that's the beautiful thing about teaching. Teaching connects, right? That's why the parent that teaches, right, is the one that the child is most connected to, right? But the parent that actually teaches, right? The mother or the father who teaches, and you see like all this, like mashayikh or hababas or whatsoever, they will speak very fondly, right, of their father who taught them. Right? They always speak about it, my father. Right? And the respect is there. And as they grow older, going back to the parent, right, to ask for advice, because you're not just a parent, you are actually a teacher, right, for them. Right? So it's a lot. The benefits are like you can't even there's no end to the benefits, right, of a physical teacher. Right, so that's why for me, like, I get very annoyed when people say these kind of things. Right, saying that, oh, it learns the same thing. Oh, they're learning better. You're not learning better. Don't say better. Right.
In the book I recommended that there's this one section about gadgets. So there was research done on like kids learning languages from a teacher and kids learning a language from the
gadgets.
video. And then from the research, they found out that the kids gained practically nothing from the video, but they picked up a lot from direct interaction with a teacher. But even though they said the exact same words,
Oh,
So what is the
subhanallah.
difference? Like why is it not working through video and why is it working?
True,
See, one of
teacher.
the main things for little kids is the body language, and they look at where the teacher is looking at. So when the teacher says, like for example,
Pointing something.
yeah, the teacher says pen like this, you will see the child looking at the teacher's face, looking at the pen, and then moving to the pen, and then making that connection. Whereas if it's on a screen,
Yeah.
yeah,
You just see the pen in front of you.
So as in like it's not a focused thing.
And
They
I-
don't see eyes. They don't see that.
the expression. And I also feel like the lips matter a lot. Like how you pronounce things, how you say things. It matters a lot. That electronics, you can't see lips, and they're pronouncing all these words. And so subhanallah, it's amazing like how they are picking it up, right? And then sometimes when they're forming sentences, right, they're picking it up and they're putting it together. Like for them, like the primary school, I've not taught them how to do done-ons when it comes to verbs, right? Like if I say what dot, just now I make them tell a story, right? Right. So he left him, right? He left him, right? So they know how to say the doer, right? But then I've not taught them formally, right? But they could all do the done-ons, right? So la tatrukuni, they could say that, right? La tatrukuni, right? Don't leave me, right? They could do that because they've heard me say so many times that so that the done-on of the to put into the verb lah, right? The connected domir, right? So Lulu was trying to the key and the car, right? So she mixed it up, the key and the car, but still she knew that not to say ta. It's not darabta. Darabtuka. She did that just now. I was like, oh, okay. So they picked up the done-ons without me even going into it formally. I've not done it formally yet with them. I will be doing it formally with them, right? But just from picking it up, they know to say darabtuka. So the two shows the doer and the ka shows the done-on. Right? So in a sense, subhanallah, they just like that, the teachers doing it, right? Then they picked up. That's how you actually speak the language. Right? You put it in. Okay, so that's why so the gestures is all important, right? For a teacher to show. Otherwise, I don't know. I find that kids who are exposed to a lot of human teaching, right? Teachers, when you give them videos, sometimes they get bored. I don't know. I actually noticed that like my nephews get very bored with videos unless it's like there's all this very fast animation, and then there is more music than animation than anything else lah. But they get bored all this video stuff. Allahu a'lam. Right, so روى البخاري ومسلم ولفظ للبخاري عن أبي موسى الأشعري رضي الله تعالى عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم المؤمن للمؤمن كالبنيان يشد بعضه بعضا ثم شبك رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أصابعه. Right, so شبك like this, right? So he did this, right? So he's a believer, right? So Imam Bukhari narrates, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari says, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, a believer to another believer is like a building. Each portion of it strengthens the other, and then he did this, right? So it strengthens the other, so it cannot break, right? Like this, right? And the next hadith, but of course, if you're in Tarim long enough, they will say not to do this. They will say, it's bad adab to, like you're sitting down, to bring your knees up like this, or you cross your legs, whatever lah, and to do this. It's actually bad adab, right? If your knees are hurting, right, then you do this. You don't actually do this. Right? The reason why they say that, right, is Abu Jahl story. It goes into Abu Jahl story because when somebody made a dua for one of the two Umars to be guided to Islam, right? Allah accepted the dua, right, and the angels came down with hidayah. Right, and when they went to Abu Jahl was doing this. Right? In a sense, there is like some sort of like arrogant feel to it when they do this. Right, so like this is a bit more humble. So he was doing this. So the dua came to Abu Jahl. He was doing this. It was deflected. And it was to Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu. But so if you're in Tarim, never do it. Right, the Hababa will show it. Don't do that. Straight away, they won't even give you even if you're a newcomer, right? She will say to the translator, tell her not to do that. Right? Then you're like, can you not do that? Then people will be like,
must it be like that or any position you can do?
Right? Usually they don't even allow like this. But usually it is the one that bring it up. So you don't really like it in the first place. Like you raising your fingers. But the hadith supposed that he did this to show strength. Because the interlace is hard to pull apart, right? Or to break apart and raise the fingers. Alright, so then next hadith. Okay. Alright, the next hadith. روى مسلم عن من حديث جابر بن عبد الله الطويل في حجة النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم قوله لو أني استقبلت من أمري ما استدبرت لم أسق الهدي وجعلتها عمرة فمن كان منكم ليس معه هدي فليحل وليجعلها عمره فقام سراقة بن مالك بن جعشم فقال يا رسول الله ألعامنا هذا أم لأبد فشبك رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أصابعه واحدة في الأخرى وقال دخلت العمرة في الحج لا بل لأبد أبد. Right, this is one of the hadiths that shows the hukum of Umrah and Hajj. Right, it's basically tamattu' and qarin. Right, Umrah qarin, tamattu', right, and the one that combines the Umrah and the Hajj, right? So here Muslim narrates a lengthy hadith from Jabir bin Abdullah with regard to the Hajj of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right, so part of the hadith was that were I to do in the future what I have already done, I would not have brought a sacrificial animal. I would have made it an umrah. Right, so whoever amongst you does not have a sacrificial animal may come out of his ihram and make it an umrah. Right, Suraqa bin Malik, right, bin Ju'ashum stood up and said, Ya Rasulullah, is this order for this year alone or forever? Rasulullah interlocked his fingers one into the other, right, and said, the Umrah has been included in the Hajj, the Umrah has been included into the Hajj. No, in fact, this order is applicable for all times. Right, so here, like, again, he used his fingers, into the other fingers to show that the Umrah is within the Hajj. They're together, right? So it's done, right? So this is basically the different laws of Umrah, whereby you can go first, right, and then you can go tamattu', meaning you do an Umrah, then you break off your ihram. When you come near Hajj, you actually do an ihram again, but you must pay dam. Right, there's a fine that you have to pay. Right, if you do that, the tamattu' way lah. Right, if you do qarin, right, it's basically you combine it together, right? So your Hajj has Umrah within it. Right, so that means when you come, you don't break your ihram. Right, you do Hajj together with the Umrah. Right, and then you can also do the Hajj and then do the Umrah thereafter. Right, separating the Hajj and the Umrah. Right, the different ways of doing it lah. Right, so the most obvious meaning of the words Umrah has been included in the Hajj is that the Umrah can be performed during the months of Hajj, as opposed to pre-Islamic claim that Umrah during the months of Hajj was not permissible. Rasulullah SAW thus refuted this claim. Right, but basically the lesson here in the Hadith is that he showed the Sahaba by means of his fingers, and the Umrah and the Hajj are together. They're within each other. Right. So and the meaning of the Hadith is that because he came with an animal and he came, intending Hajj. Right. So he didn't intend to do Umrah first and then Hajj. But he came intending Hajj. Right. So for him, he has to actually continue, right, and do the Hajj and stay in his ihram. So he said to the people there, if any of you didn't come with an animal, right, then you can do the other way. So he gave the ruling, the fiqh ruling. You can actually do your Umrah and then break it, right, and then later on take the ihram again, right, and then do Hajj. Right, but you have to pay dam. Right? You must actually pay them, right? And also the Suraqah bin Malik. Suraqah bin Malik's name that they should actually ring a bell for you, right? Who is he? He's the guy who actually he went after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam during the migration, right? And he actually caught up with Rasulullah, but his horse kept falling over, right? That was Suraqah bin Malik, right? So he's here now as a Muslim, he's appearing in his hadith, right? And he asked an important question, right? To know if this is just for this year or forever, because Rasulullah said in the hadith, right? If in the future, I will do it this way, right? So now he's like, oh, so right? Must we always do the other way, right? Or can we do it, the way that you said you would do in the future, right? And Rasulullah says that no, right? It can be done at all times, right? So it's not a law that is specific for this time, right? But it is law that is forever. Right, so he clarified the law. So here again you see Suraqah bin Malik, he asked important question there for us. Right, to know if it's just here or forever. Right, same thing with there was some Sahaba, right, when there was a ruling given to them, and it was asked just for him or for everybody. That kind of thing, like is a law for everybody or just for him? And some will actually clarify, it is for everybody at all times. And sometimes he will say, oh no, just for him. I mean just for this one time, and the law is for him. Right, so he will actually clarify. Alright. Okay, we have a few more hadiths. We take one more hadith, so we will stop there. Hadith 65 رواه البخاري عن سهل بن سعد الساعدي رضي الله تعالى عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أنا وكافل اليتيم في الجنة كهاتين وأشار بإصبعيه السبابة والوسطى وفرج بينهما شيئا. Right, so Bukhari narrates on the authority of Sahal bin Sa'ad al-Sa'idi radiallahu anhu, who said that Rasulullah said, I am the one who takes care of the orphan will be like this in paradise. Then he pointed with his two fingers, with his forefinger and middle finger, and left a slight gap between the two. Right, so he did this. Right, it's a small gap. Okay. Right, so the ulama differ as to what this actually means. Right, some say, right, that this means that they will be this close in paradise, the one who's after the orphan. Right, some say that their degree in paradise is this amount, the level, the height of the forefinger and the height of the middle finger. And some say that also. Some ulama actually comment on the height of the fingers, and some comment on the gap between the fingers, because he had a gap between them. Right, but basically very close lah. Whatever it is very close. Right, so to show how close he is with someone who is in who looks after the yatim. Right, because Rasulullah SAW himself was a yatim, right, and he also used to look after the yatims. Right, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right, so he's very the one who looks at the yatim holds a very high position, right, with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right, there's actually a story of Salama, right, whereby she said to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's a very beautiful hadith. She says to Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, right, do I get the reward of someone looking after the yatim, right, by looking after Abu Salama's children? Right, I mean her husband who has passed away, if I love Abu Salama's children, right, do I get the reward of looking after the yatim? Even though I will not leave them, they're my children, right? They're also my children, right? But I won't leave them, right? But do I get the reward of someone looking after the yatim? And so she answered her question, right? So she's wondering, is Abu Salama's children technically, because he's the father, right? And I'm looking after them, right? Because I won't leave them, they're my children, right? So then he said to her, yes, you will get the reward, right, of looking after Abu Salama's children, even though you won't leave them anyway, but you still get the same reward, right, as the one who actually took a yatim under their wing, right, and look after the yatim, same reward. So when the mother looking after the yatim children, right, has the same reward as the kafil yatim, right, it's under the same category, right? So alhamdulillah. Right, and Allahu Alam, some of the ulama actually extend it, right, to the yatim, including abandoned children. So while they have their parents still alive, right, imprisoned parents, right, parents who are not capable of looking after their children. So basically, foster homes lah. Right, when you take over kids from foster homes, right, look after them. Right, the ulama consider all of these people to be yatim also, right, because they are of the same ruling as the yatim, because their parents are not able to look after them. right? So all of this fall under yatim, right? So those who actually foster in their older age, when your kids are grown and you want to foster younger children, if you want to consider, right? It's like you actually, it's a lot it's a lot, because like all these kids come with a lot of baggage. They come with a lot of,
Like 6 months.
Yeah, 6 months a year. Yeah.
There's a shortage of Muslim.
Yeah, they have a shortage. Yeah, that's right. That's the thing. My husband was talking about it also. Like, he was saying, if we have our own house, because now we don't have our own house, right? We have our own house, and maybe we should do it lah. Like, so at least you inject some Islam into their lives. Like they have some sort of taste, of what it's like to be in a Muslim family, right? Practicing family, you teach them some Quran, some fiqh, right? Aqidah, right? And then even if they go back to their parents, like, at least there's something that's ingrained. Something, some effect. Hopefully, like, you always hope, right? But of course, I know it's not easy at all to take up for first children, because they have a lot of baggage, a lot emotional issues, and you're not the parent, so they don't even have to obey you, right? And you can't force them to, especially they're of older age and they're primary school teenagers, and the young, yeah. But again, same thing. I mean, toddlers also same thing. They might disobey. They might, it's hard lah. You're not the mother. At the end of the day, you're not the mother. You're not the father, right? So, and they know you're not. You're not their father. You're not their mother, right? So they might just, they do whatever they want to do lah. Right? In a way, yeah.
But, when they go home, they will still come back because they know
it's safe. And also like if mashallah. And sometimes they need to find a place for, solace. Looking for peace. They know where to run to. I know which house is open for them. Right, that you can come to this house anytime. Right, just come. That kind of thing. Of course, it's a lot. I mean, it's a lot of reward. Right, and the ulama, they do put it under the yatim. Right, the foster child is under the yatim. Right, so if you want to earn this hadith, try and adoption, same thing also. Adoption is very much recommended in Islam, only that you're not allowed to change the father's name. Right, there's the only part that's not allowed. Right, but mahram wise, if there's no mahram between you and the child, right, then just cover up if the child is of age, that means of puberty and whatever. But usually, because in Islam, right, the thing about it is that, in the past, when a child reaches puberty, they're adults. So there's no thing of adoption, because you don't adopt an adult, that kind of thing, right? So, but in our time, right, teenagers are adopted. The kind of thing, like of course, in their time, you adopt a child below the age of puberty. So once they have reached puberty, you give them, they're not active anymore, and they're not needy anymore. So you give them their money back, and they handle themselves. So in the past, there was no issue of this mahram thing or whatsoever, because when they reach puberty, they're on their own. But now it's an issue, because when you adopt a child at a very young age, you look after them until they are like in their 20s. Sometimes like all into their teenage years. So now the issue has come because of the, like Sheikh Hamza has all this talks about the teenage fallacy and this invented age group, the teenager, the invented age group, right? So in that case, mahram lah. So you just cover up. That's all. If you adopted a girl, then teach her to cover up, right, in front of your husband, right? And it's not hard because we have plenty of helpers in the house. All of our we all cover up. We make them wear their hijab in the house. It's not hard at all to cover up in the house. For me, I'm used to it because my house, we have like people come in and out all the time. We have tuition, students, whatsoever. So since I was young, I cover up in the house. It's not hard. I just teach the laws of mahram, right, on her, or if it's a him, and on you. And the moment they can support themselves, they can be on their own. Easier. Right, if you want to put in university, put them in a hostel. Right, they can stay in a hostel, that kind of thing. Right, so alhamdulillah. Right, and a lot of people have this issue of the mahram thing. They don't want to adopt. But to me, compared to someone's life, this child has no one look after him, and you putting on your hijab every now and then. Come on, it should not be a big issue, right? That I don't want to bring in this child into my house because I have to cover up in front of the child. Just cover.
Another issue is, she has Are the kids at home?
She has a girl in madrasah, so if the girl goes to school, she's home.
And the covering up.
Another concern is probably like, because like these people are from working home, so you don't know what kind of language they're exposed to.
Yeah.
What kind of
That's the foster. Foster adoption different. Adoption is from baby. Foster is hard. It can be very hard fostering because they what they were exposed to. So there's a lot of you're trying to undo a lot of damage, and that has been done to the children. But of course, it's a noble cause. You're really being. But it's hard lah. It's hard because you don't know what they're gonna bring into the home. Babies are okay. Yeah.
This was a girl in primary school.
Yeah. It's only when they grow older and you foster them, right? Then fostering is for the older kids. It's hard, and it's best that if you don't have other kids in the house, right, that might be affected by the foster child, or that they are adult. Your kids are adult, right? And then you bring in a foster child. Like my auntie, my uncle did that also. The kids that were all adult, or like older teenage years, and then they brought in a primary 4-year-old, and then primary 4. So the boy was like rowdy and whatsoever, but their kids are older girls. They're over it already. So consideration, all these things. But I mean, the niyat of trying to do something that Rasulullah will be pleased with, right? To foster the child, right? And to create. I mean, it's one of the strong ways of trying to break the cycle, lah. Because they are in a vicious cycle with their parents being, drug addicts or whatever their parents are, lah. So there's going to be this cycle going on. So maybe you could be the one who, even yet, right, to try and pull them out of this entire cycle, right, of the family. Allahu alam. Alright, we're going to stop there. Sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Al-Fatiha. Ana wa razaqna min nafi' wa amal khas wa ista'alim bidil huda wa yusaru bi nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam wa arwahi ma'ani min mashayikhina wa zawil hukki alayna wa ila hadrat nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Al-Fatiha. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wal 'asr. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. الحمد لله رب العالمين.